Step into my courtroom for 5 minutes, and you will quickly realize that the phrase good fences make good neighbors is the biggest load of baloney ever sold to the American public. Fences don't make good neighbors. Common sense makes good neighbors. Decency makes good neighbors. A fence is just a piece of wood waiting for two grown adults with too much time on their hands to turn it into a battlefield. And let me tell you, when people go to war over property lines, they don't bring guns. They bring paint, petty grievances, and a level of stupidity that absolutely exhausts me. That brings us to the case of Arthur Pendleton versus Brenda Higgins. Two grown adults, both pushing 60, living side by side in a perfectly nice suburban neighborhood, who have somehow managed to turn a 70-foot wooden privacy fence into the Cuban Missile Crisis. Arthur is the plaintiff. He walked into my courtroom wearing a tweed jacket that looked like it hadn't breathed since 1994, clutching a 3-inch thick binder. I know the type the second they step up to the podium. The binder people, they think because they hole-punched some receipts and printed out 50 pages of blurry, grainy photographs, I am going to be blinded by their brilliant legal minds. He is suing for $5,000 property damage, trespassing, and of course, the granddaddy of all frivolous nonsense, intentional infliction of emotional distress. I shut that down before he even opened his mouth. I told him straight up, Mr. Pendleton, if you are having emotional distress over a piece of timber, you need a psychiatrist, not a judge. I deal with actual financial damages, not your hurt feelings. On the other side of the aisle stands the defendant, Brenda Higgins. Brenda had her arms crossed so tightly across her chest, I thought she was going to crack a rib. She had that smug, tight-lipped expression of a woman who spends her weekends looking through her blinds, taking notes on what time the garbage men arrive. She radiates defiance, but in my courtroom, defiance without facts is just a quick trip to a judgment against you. The story started, as these things always do, with a minor irritation that festered because nobody knew how to mind their own business. Arthur built the fence. He paid for it entirely out of his own pocket 5 years ago, placing it exactly 1 inch inside his property line. He had the land survey to prove it. I looked at the survey. It was legitimate. So the fence belongs to Arthur. It is his property. This is not a complex legal doctrine. You buy the wood, you put it on your dirt, it is your fence. Brenda, however, seems to operate under the delusion that because she can look at the fence, she somehow has jurisdiction over it. For years, the fence was a natural, unstained wood. Then, 3 months ago, Arthur decided to paint it. He chose a color called Alabaster Serenity. It is white. It is just white. But the paint companies love to make you think you are brushing tranquility onto your cedar planks. He painted his side, and he painted the top edge. Brenda did not like Alabaster Serenity. Brenda felt the white was too glaring when she sat on her patio drinking her morning coffee. Now, a rational human being would either ignore it, plant some tall bushes, or simply look somewhere else. Not Brenda. Brenda decided to take matters into her own hands. She vandalized my property, Your Honor, Arthur said, his voice trembling with a dramatic flair that was entirely unnecessary. He opened his giant binder, dramatically flipping to a tab marked Exhibit A. Just hand the pictures to the bailiff, Mr. Pendleton, I told him. I don't need a theatrical performance. I need the evidence. Bird, bring those up here. Officer Bird handed me the photographs. I put on my glasses and took a look. I have seen a lot of property damage in my 25 years on the bench, but this was a special kind of petty. Brenda had not just painted her side of the fence. No, she had taken a high-powered paint sprayer, filled it with a color I can only describe as radioactive eggplant, and blasted the wood. She didn't use a drop cloth. She didn't use painter's tape. She sprayed with such reckless abandon that the purple paint had blasted over the top of the fence, dripping down like thick, ugly tears all over Arthur's Alabaster Serenity. I looked up over my glasses at Brenda. She was standing there, chin jutted out, waiting for me to ask. Miss Higgins, I said, tapping the photograph against my desk. Did you do this? I painted my side of the fence, Judge. she said loudly, as if volume equaled truth. I have a right to enjoy my backyard. That white was blinding. It was a nuisance. I didn't ask if it was blinding. I snapped. Listen to the question I am asking you, and only answer that question. Did you take a paint sprayer and spray this purple monstrosity onto the fence? It's not a monstrosity. It's called Tuscan Twilight, she muttered. I don't care if it's called Barney the Dinosaur's Nightmare, I said, my voice rising to fill the room. Did you spray it? Yes, but... I held up my hand sharply. Stop right there. Yes is an answer, but is an excuse. I don't care about your excuses. This fence does not belong to you. It is entirely on Mr. Pendleton's property. He paid for it. He maintains it. What gave you the right to touch property that does not belong to you? It faces my yard, she argued, throwing her hands up. Half the fence is on my side of the visual line. The city code says... Don't play junior lawyer with me, madam, I warned her, leaning forward. You will lose. The city code says you can paint a shared boundary fence if you have an agreement. This is not a boundary fence. It is set back 1 inch on his property. It is his fence. If you park your car on the street in front of my house, and I don't like the color of your car, do I have the right to go out there with a bucket of purple paint and slap it on your hood? That's different, she yelled. It is exactly the same, I fired back. Property is property. You don't get to alter someone else's property just because you have to look at it. If you don't like his fence, build your own fence. Put it on your property line and paint it whatever ridiculous color you want. But you put your hands and your paint on his property. Arthur, sensing that he was winning, decided this was the perfect moment to start running his mouth. And she did it on purpose, Your Honor. I saw her laughing. She deliberately aimed the sprayer over the top so it would ruin my side. I shot him a glare that could freeze water. Mr. Pendleton, did I ask you to speak? He blinked, caught off guard. No, Your Honor. Then zip it. You are winning. When you are winning, the smartest thing you can do is keep your mouth shut. Don't make me annoyed with you. I am already annoyed enough with her. I turned my attention back to Brenda. The tension in the room was palpable. Brenda was seething, clearly used to bullying her neighbors and getting her way. She thought she was going to come in here and explain away her vandalism with some twisted logic about neighborhood aesthetics. I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to come up with another defense. Judge, Brenda said, her tone suddenly shifting to a condescending whine. He was harassing me with that white paint. He knew I had migraines. The glare was a medical issue. I actually laughed. A short, sharp bark of a laugh. Migraines? From a white fence? Madam, please, do I have stupid written across my forehead? You did this out of spite. Pure, unadulterated spite. You expect me to believe that a medical condition was triggered by painted cedar? I asked, lowering my voice. That is usually when they should know they are in trouble. When I start yelling, I am just trying to establish order. When I get quiet, I am about to lower the boom. Miss Higgins, I have been doing this a very long time. I listen to people lie to me for a living, and you are not particularly good at it. Brenda opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. I am speaking. You are listening. Put your hands down and stand up straight. She dropped her hands, her face flushing an angry crimson that almost matched her ridiculous paint job. Let me tell you something about human nature. People do not wake up on a random Tuesday after 5 years of living next to someone and suddenly decide to destroy a fence over aesthetic preferences. There is always a catalyst. There is always a moment, usually incredibly juvenile, where the relationship turns sour. A normal person would look at this case and see a dispute about paint. I look at this case and I know, without a shadow of a doubt, that someone insulted someone else, or someone blocked a driveway, or someone's dog relieved itself on the wrong side of the rose bushes. I looked back at Arthur, Mr. Pendleton. Put the binder down. Look at me. Arthur nervously closed the giant binder and rested his hands on the podium. You built the... Well, Your Honor, it was starting to weather, and I wanted to protect the wood. Baloney. I said flatly. Don't give me the DIY network excuse. Wood weathers from day one. You didn't seal it for 5 years. Why did you suddenly decide to paint it a blinding white 3 months ago? What did she do to you? Arthur shifted his weight from his left foot to his right. He looked like a schoolboy who had just been caught trying to pass a note. I just wanted to improve the property value. Mr. Pendleton, I warned, taking off my glasses and pointing them at him. I am going to ask you one more time, and if you lie to me again, I will dismiss your case, and you can go home and live with a purple fence. What happened between you and Miss Higgins right before you painted the fence? Arthur swallowed hard. He knew the gig was up. She bought a hot tub, Your Honor. Bingo! The missing piece of the puzzle. I leaned back in my chair and crossed my arms. A hot tub. I see. And where did she put this hot tub? Right against the property line, Arthur said, his voice rising with the indignation he had been trying to hide. Right next to the fence. And she and her friends would sit out there at all hours of the night, drinking wine, playing loud music, and talking. I could hear every word they said right through the wood. It was intolerable. I turned my gaze slowly toward Brenda. She was suddenly looking down at her fingernails, the righteous indignation melting away into something that looked suspiciously like guilt. So I said, addressing Arthur but watching Brenda, she bought a loud, bubbling annoyance, put it right next to your bedroom window, and refused to keep the noise down. So you retaliated. I didn't retaliate, Arthur protested. I painted my fence. Oh, stop it, I snapped. You painted it a glaring white, and I would bet my next paycheck you did it hoping the reflection from the sun would blind her and her friends while they were soaking in their little backyard soup bowl. You did it to annoy her. Don't play innocent with me. You are just as petty as she is. Arthur looked down at his shoes. The white paint was on sale, he muttered. I don't care if it was free, I said. You provoked her. But I raised my hand and pointed a finger directly at Brenda. Provocation does not equal permission. Just because your neighbor is being an irritating, passive-aggressive nuisance does not give you the right to destroy his property. If he is violating a noise ordinance, you call the police. If he is being a jerk, you ignore him. What you do not do is go to the hardware store, rent a paint sprayer, and declare war. Brenda could not hold it in anymore. The dam broke. He's a miserable old man. Judge, she yelled, slamming her hand down on the podium. He hates seeing anyone enjoy their life. The second I got that hot tub, he started shining floodlights into my yard. He put up a camera that points directly at my patio. He is a voyeur and a creep. Madam, control yourself in my courtroom, I barked, slamming my hand on the desk. The sound echoed sharply, and the room went dead silent. Do not yell at me, and do not throw a temper tantrum. You are an adult, act like one. I stared her down until she broke eye contact. You cannot let these people control the room for a single second. The moment you let them shout, you lose the authority. Let's get one thing completely straight, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I am not here to judge whether Mr. Pendleton is a good neighbor. I am not here to judge whether he is a miserable old man. Frankly, looking at the two of you, I wouldn't want to live next to either of you. You both sound like a complete nightmare. I picked up the stack of photographs again and held up the picture of the ruined fence. But I am a judge of the law, and the law is very simple. This fence belongs to him. You damaged it. Now we are going to talk about the cost of your little purple temper tantrum. Mr. Pendleton, how much did it cost to fix this mess? Arthur opened his binder again, suddenly regaining his confidence now that the target was back on Brenda. I have an estimate right here, Your Honor. It will cost $3,250 to power wash the purple paint off, sand the wood down, and repaint it properly. Brenda scoffed loudly. That is a complete scam. My brother-in-law is a contractor. He said he could fix it for $400. He just needs some paint thinner and a weekend. I wouldn't let your brother-in-law near my property if he was the last contractor on earth, Arthur shot back. Quiet, I commanded. Both of you. Brenda, I do not care what your brother-in-law thinks. He is not here, he is not under oath, and unless he is willing to do the work for free to bail you out of your own stupidity, his opinion is entirely irrelevant. I turned to Officer Byrd. Byrd, hand me the estimates from the plaintiff. Byrd brought over 3 pieces of paper. I reviewed them carefully. This is where the rubber meets the road. People love to sue for the maximum amount allowed in small claims court, but they never have the actual receipts to back it up. Arthur had submitted 3 professional estimates from licensed contractors. The lowest was $2,800. The highest was $3,500. These estimates are for completely replacing the panels that got ruined, I noted, looking over my glasses at Arthur. You didn't just ask them to clean it. You asked them to replace the wood. The wood is deeply porous, Your Honor, Arthur said, sounding like he had memorized a Wikipedia article on cedar. The purple paint seeped into the grain. The contractors all said power washing would destroy the integrity of the fence. I looked at Brenda. Did you use oil-based exterior paint, Miss Higgins? I don't know, she said defensively. I just bought the one that looked nice. Of course you don't know, I sighed, rubbing my temples. You didn't read the can. You didn't prep the area. You just started spraying like a lunatic. It wasn't like a lunatic, Brenda shrieked, clearly wounded by the description. It was calculated. I aimed specifically for the part that was glaring into my yard. I dropped the estimates onto the desk and stared at her. The silence stretched out for 5 uncomfortable seconds. I wanted her to hear what she had just said. I wanted the sheer absurdity of her defense to hang in the air until she realized how ridiculous she sounded. Calculated, I repeated slowly. You are admitting, under oath, in a court of law, that your vandalism was premeditated and calculated. Brenda opened her mouth, then snapped it shut. She finally realized she had talked herself into a corner. I mean, no, don't try to backtrack now, I said, holding up a hand. You've said enough. You have admitted to the intentional destruction of property that does not belong to you, and you did it with an oil-based exterior paint that ruined the structural integrity of the cedar panels. I turned my attention back to the estimates. $2,800 to fix a petty squabble over a hot tub and some white paint. It was absurd, but it was the reality of the damage she caused. Mr. Pendleton, I said, addressing Arthur, you are suing for $5,000. You have presented me with a low estimate of $2,800 for the repairs. What, pray tell, is the remaining $2,200 for? Arthur straightened his posture, clearly anticipating this question. That is for the intentional infliction of emotional distress, Your Honor, and the loss of enjoyment of my property. I haven't been able to use my backyard in 3 months because I have to look at that hideous purple monstrosity. I told you at the beginning of this hearing, Mr. Pendleton, I said, my voice dripping with exasperation, I do not care about your emotional distress. You do not get a check for $2,000 because you are annoyed by a color. You are not a victim of a crime. You are a participant in a petty neighborhood feud. You lose $2,000 of your claim right off the top. Arthur looked disappointed, but wisely kept his mouth shut. He had learned his lesson earlier. Now, I continued addressing both of them. Let me tell you exactly how this is going to end, because I am not going to sit here all day listening to you two bicker like school children fighting over a sandbox. I picked up my pen. Miss Higgins, you committed vandalism, pure and simple. You let your anger override your common sense, and now you are going to pay for it. I am awarding the plaintiff $2,800 to replace the damaged fence panels. Brenda's jaw dropped. $2,800? That's outrageous. I can't afford that. You should have thought about that before you went to the hardware store, I said flatly. Actions have consequences, and in this courtroom, those consequences have a dollar amount attached to them. You are going to pay Mr. Pendleton the $2,800. And let me make this very clear to you. You are never to touch that fence again. You are never to paint it, spray it, lean against it, or look at it cross-eyed. Do you understand me? Brenda swallowed hard, tears welling up in her eyes. Yes, Judge. Good, I said. Now, Mr. Pendleton, Arthur perked up, a smug smile threatening to break across his face. "Wipe that look off your face," I warned him, and the smile vanished instantly. "You may have won the judgment, but do not think for a second I don't see exactly what you did here. You escalated this situation. You provoked her. You painted that fence a glaring white specifically to annoy her because you didn't like her hot tub. You are just as responsible for the toxic environment in your neighborhood as she is." I leaned forward, making sure he caught every word. "You are getting the money to fix the fence, but I strongly suggest when you replace those panels, you leave them natural wood. If you paint them white again, and she retaliates again, I will not be so sympathetic the next time you walk into my courtroom. Do not poke the bear, Mr. Pendleton. Do you hear me?" "Loud and clear, Your Honor," Arthur said, properly chastised. "Good. This feud ends today. You both go back to your homes, you stay on your own sides of the property line, and you leave each other alone. If you can't be good neighbors, at least be quiet strangers." Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $2,800. We are finished here. I slammed my gavel down. "Bird, clear the room." As they packed up their belongings and headed for the doors, I watched them go. Arthur clutching his ridiculous binder, Brenda wiping away angry tears. Two adults who had let pride and pettiness consume their lives. They will probably go back to their houses and stare at each other through the blinds for the rest of their lives. They will never speak, but they will never truly be free of each other. That is the tragedy of a neighborhood feud. They think they are fighting for their property, but all they are really doing is destroying their peace of mind. I shook my head, already exhausted, and motioned to Bird. "Next case, Bird, and let's hope it's about a dog. At least dogs have an excuse for acting like animals."